I broke down, I'm borrowing my freshman Surface Go so that I could write all over the materials this week.
I've got to learn how to do that. I'm taking notes in my calendar and it's not very efficient.
Yeah, I've been taking them in a notebook or trying to print things, write on them, and it's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So I
All right. So we are streaming now, Lydia. So anytime you want to start the meeting, the streaming just began.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Radnor Township School District Curriculum Committee meeting for June 16th, 2020. This is our second Curriculum Committee meeting for the month of June. So we again have a very busy agenda. So we'll go ahead and get started. First item on the agenda is introductions and administrative remarks. Mr. Bechtold.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we, as Ms. Solomon said, we have a very robust agenda covering diversity, equity, and inclusion, an update for the findings of our PE for Athletes Committee, and a presentation by our librarians. One thing I would like to highlight is the district has been working diligently to prepare for school in September, and we'll have a presentation about the work that has been done thus far, as well as what is yet to come at the business meeting next week. I know that this is a topic that is on the minds of many parents and students, and so we would encourage you to mark your calendars and tune into the business meeting for an update about what school could look like in the fall.
All right, and that brings us to the second item on our agenda, which is public comment. Mr. Petiti, is there any public comment at this time?
Yes, I think I have about 10 to 12 here. I'll read as quickly and clearly as I can. The first is from Rish T. Batra. Good afternoon. I visited the RTSD school board site and had a question regarding community participation. I understand that school board meetings are held on the fourth Tuesday of every month and that all community members are welcome to attend, but I had a more specific question regarding community participation. If community members have a question for the board or perhaps would like to present something to the board during the meetings, what would be the appropriate method to go about doing this? As I gathered from the website, an agenda is made available the Monday before each meeting, but I wasn't quite sure how to submit an agenda item from the community, or perhaps a question for discussion ahead of time. I would greatly appreciate if you could please point me in the direction or perhaps put me in touch with the right person. Thank you for your time. The next is from Sandra Rion, an associate professor in the Department of Cancer Biology at the Abrahamson Cancer Center. Dear curriculum members and administrators, I would like to add my voice as a parent of 3 kids in the RTSD school system and as a member of the Radnor community to the many others who would like to see age-appropriate education about racial, and religious tolerance, equity, and literacy in our RTSD K-12 curriculum. There are many ways to approach and offer this type of curriculum, and I'll be happy to offer my detailed thoughts if and when it is appropriate. As a professor at an Ivy League institution, I've been listening to our Black students and trainees these past 2 weeks describe the heartbreaking daily onslaught of racism and microaggressions that they are faced with from fellow students, faculty, and staff. I am a firm believer that education from the earliest ages is one lever we can use to change attitudes, shift perceptions, and promote tolerance. Next, from Katie Wellen, an associate professor in the Department of Cancer Biology at the University of Penn Perelman School of Medicine. As a parent of a child at rest and a member of the community, I am ready to add my voice to the recommendation to add age-appropriate curriculums to teach racial and religious tolerance, equity, and literacy in the K-12 curriculum. The events of recent weeks have led to many questions from our daughter and discussions in our home. I'm a professor at Penn, and this week we have had many heartbreaking stories from Black students and colleagues about the microaggressions and other instances of bias that they face on a daily basis. I believe that age-appropriate education on these topics, even in elementary school, is an important way to shift perception and move towards a more just society. Dear members of the school, this one is from Rachel Zerlak-Lowe. Dear members of the school board, the events of recent weeks, coupled with the disruption of COVID-19, present an opportunity for our school district to embrace change and imagine new, more equitable education and pedagogy. There's much work to do, and this current movement is a genesis for change. Amid the uncertainty, chaos, fear, anger, frustration, and hurt of the past months, we have learned much about how we envision school and where the gaps are. Even before the violent murder of George Floyd, it was clear that our social system was continuing to fail our communities of color, especially our Black and brown students. As COVID-19 sent us into isolation and self-directed learning, it was visible which families had abundant resources and which needed additional support. I'm not referring just to financial and material resources, but also to social capital that allowed some families to nearly seamlessly transition to self-directed learning while some struggled and others abandoned it. District employees and volunteers work very hard to reach all families, and I applaud them for the efforts provided in individual support. This is not an individual level problem. What we're witnessing is a failing system of inequity that is baked into the foundation of this country. For example, in recent days, I learned that the history of police forces in America is connected to policing slaves. How can we say our institutional infrastructure is fair and equitable when so much of it emerges from a system designed to restrain, control, and oppress many of us? I believe that district is working to make changes, but there's more to be done to understand that racism and other oppressions aren't individual problems. They're systemic ones. Every single one of us must do work to affect change. As a cisgender, heterosexual white woman, I have work to do. This article, I Am Karen, written by an educator, helps to unpack this tension and serves as a reminder that undoing racism isn't a sprint or single event. It's a marathon that we all need to run. We must commit to the ways that we are all complicit in systems of oppression, often unconsciously. My goal was for them to leave my courses with a sense that the world is infinitely more complicated and less fair than they thought it was, and that their actions can work to make it more equitable. I asked them to examine how their own identities are privileged, then I asked them to take definitive action to confront an inequity. Together we learn and act. There are abundant resources that can help us understand, imagine, and reinvent. Howard Stevenson's scholarship on racial stress and trauma is essential for all educators, yet we must be careful not to define racialized experiences with a single story. All children deserve to be seen as fully human and not defined by a single narrative of being less than, of being damaged. I strongly recommend the work of Bettina Love. You can also read a recent article by her here. Another scholar who provides a beautiful and brilliant and resonating framework for education is Goldie Muhammad, whose work on cultural and historically responsive literacy transform understanding of African American historical experiences. In fact, if you could read just one book this summer, I would recommend hers, Cultivating Genius. Then read Bettina Love's We Want to Do More Than Survive to be further enlightened and inspired. These books and these authors will help move us toward equitable education that is grounded in love and invested in the success of all. Finally, we need to think beyond the black-white racial divide to reflect on the interconnectedness of other systems of oppression. Believing that we can, quote, fix racism without taking into account how it is woven into our historical roots and contemporary world is no better than putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. What are some ways that RTSD can begin to impact the many ways that our district perpetuates false narratives at the expense of particular groups? For example, how does the RHS mascot of the Raider reinforce stereotypes, ignore historical and present-day violence, and perpetuate white supremacy? When a group of concerned students broached this subject with the district, they were lauded for their efforts to effect change, but ultimately told nothing could be done. This is how we show the next generation how to learn, grow, and confront inequity. A powerful first step to lead a commitment to anti-racism will be replacing the mascot. Will you do it? In closing, I ask you, what action will Radnor Township School District take to confront systemic racism and oppression that reinforces privilege for one group at the expense of others? Thank you for your time and commitment to our children, our community, and our futures.
Excuse me, Michael, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I know we have a limited amount of time. Could you just read just a teeny bit slower? It's just a little hard, maybe with the delay, to catch some of what's being said. Thank you.
Yes, it's difficult to judge, how fast and how slow here. Okay, I mean, you can understand. Thank you. It's from Sarah Baila, PhD, senior lecturer in critical writing and history at the University of Penn. I write in line with my friend Anna Maria Jones to endorse a curriculum review for K-12 to more rigorously address issues of systemic racism and equity. I'm a historian. My field is African history with a subspecialty in African diasporas and American history. I teach at Penn. I am also the mother of 3 Radnor students, 1 in elementary, middle, and high as of next year. In both capacities, I have had a window onto what the district does well and where, in my opinion, it falls short. when it comes to teaching about race and equity. To give some concrete examples, big and small. African American history is largely relegated to February, removing its centrality to the general narrative of America's past. Thanksgiving continues to be taught as the heroic triumph of goodwill against historic consensus that starts young. What focus there is on race and racism does not engage with white privilege, thereby making race the problem of Black and brown peoples only. I have little experience at the high school, so perhaps these and other issues are taken up there. If not, we are preparing students to be shocked when they hit college, or worse, should they never engage with history/social studies beyond high school, not only to not understand systemic racism, but most likely to participate in its perpetuation. I don't pretend to know the answers to these questions. Curriculum work is not my field. I could, however, work to connect our district with people who are engaged in evaluating and bolstering the K-12 curriculums, and to lend my knowledge where it might be useful. If Radnor is to remain the excellent school district it is incumbent upon us to face these issues head on. Thank you for taking the time to read this long email. The next is from Teji Brennan. I am running in support of an idea proposed by Anne-Marie Jones to implement teaching of racial and religious tolerance in the RTSD curriculum. There is a clear benefit to our children's society to have a basic understanding of how race has and continues to play a part in our everyday lives. As we've seen over the last few weeks, it will not be an easy conversation to have, but it is vitally important for us to be able to move forward and raise empathetic, healthy, and productive citizens. I, along with many friends, have been having conversations with our children about what they're seeing and where we go from here. Now is an opportunity for our schools to continue these conversations in a productive way. I'm happy to participate in or support any initiatives that may address this issue. From Lauren Williams. Dear School Board, I'm writing in support of an idea that my friend Anna-Marie Jones voiced via a letter to the board within the last week or so. The events of the past few weeks in our country have brought up many questions and discussions in our house. Among my 3 older children, a rising junior, a rising freshman, and a rising 6th grader. As you well know, it's easy to go out and march in a protest, and it's important. There are so many nuanced issues that swirl around the history of race in our country and the many different circumstances that can present themselves to kids as they navigate a diverse world. To me, it's a no-brainer to introduce age-appropriate education about racial and religious tolerance, equity, literacy through K-12 curriculum. The giving of information will be the bare minimum positive impact of this effort. It will provide a forum for honest questions and discussions, the likes of which can only be had in dynamic learning environments such as RTSD. Thank you for your consideration. From Honora Cutler. I would like to add my voice as a parent of 4 children at rest and as a member of the Radnor community to the many others who would like to see age-appropriate education about racial and religious tolerance and equality in the RTSD K-12 curriculum. As an employee of Drexel University, I've listened to town hall meetings where graduate school students spoke of microaggressions and discrimination that they face daily. It was absolutely heartbreaking to listen to their stories. I feel compelled to do more than just not be passively non-racist myself. I think the biggest impact I can have is to ensure that the 4 impressionable young minds that I am responsible for recognize and embrace the differences in others. I believe that early education is the best chance we have to change attitudes and shift perceptions regarding racism in our country. Of course, this attitude needs to come from values and acceptance taught at home, but reinforcement in the form of the school curriculum will be incredible to see. From a Mr. and Mrs. McDonald. As a parent of 3 children in Radnor Township, I would like to propose that the Radnor Township School Board and Administration expand the curriculum to address systemic racism and religious tolerance at the elementary levels in age-appropriate ways. We're aware that the curriculum committee meets on Tuesday, June 16th, and hope that you will discuss our request at that time. Please see my prior email to Dr. Batchelor on this matter and the district's response to current issues of racism plaguing our country below. And here is that said email. The inexcusable murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many others before them has produced a communal outrage and fueled a growing anti-racism within our country. During this time, it is critical for the leaders of our schools to take a clear public stand against racism and hate unequivocally. Dr. Batchelor's brief email shared with the parents of Radnor Township School District students last week stopped short of taking such a necessary stand. It was ambiguous, leaving too much to interpretation. Further, the lack of additional reinforcement of that message on the RTSD website and its weekly e-newsletter, The Radnor Reader, makes us question how well the leaders of the school district truly understand what is happening around the nation. In contrast, the response of the Lower Merion School District and others on the main line more accurately reflect the urgency of the situation and provided the assurance and support Black children and other children of color need from their school leaders. In some cases, school districts have taken a second opportunity to clarify their stances after realizing that their first response was inadequate. We are asking that you do the same. In addition to communicating a clear stance as a school district, we are concerned that the education about race difference, equity, and inclusion are not being addressed effectively within RTSD. The overall academic quality of RTSD is one of the driving reasons why we chose to relocate to Radnor. However, we are also firmly believe that childhood education is a much more character building and preparing students to be good, active citizens, as it is about reading, writing, and arithmetic. To that end, we desire that our schools enlighten all our students about the racial injustices in society, not just those from the past, but those that currently challenge us today. Engage all our students about both the implicit and overt instances of racism and other injustices they witness both abroad and in their very midst. Encourage our students to imagine what society ought to be like. Empower our students to take proactive measures to make justice a reality. And exhibit, as an institution, a daily self-reflective commitment to being the change we all wish to see in the world. This self-reflective commitment should include, at minimum, a resolve to 1, listen and learn to impact the communities, 2, respond with empathy, creativity, and understanding to incidents of racial injustice that produce such strong visceral and emotional responses, and 3, create opportunities for mutual learning and aid within the RTSD at all levels that prepare students to address these issues both within and outside of the privileged Radnor bubble. Under separate cover, I will forward your response and mutual learning curriculum that the principal of Gladwin Elementary developed for our students in direct response to the challenges facing our society today. It accurately reflects the self-reflective commitment that we would love to see adopted by our community, communicating a deep commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity, as well as providing guidance as to how we can achieve it. Many other school districts, universities, and businesses in our area have sent similar communications, and I'm happy to share more. We are prepared to assist in this work, endeavoring to help RTSD's commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity match its commitment to excellence in the scholastic achievement of our students. Okay, a couple more. Actually, 1. Nope, 2. It's from Terry Baker. I'm ready to support Anna Marie Jones' proposal to the RTSD School Board and Administration to consider a two-pronged approach to teaching racial and religious tolerance in the Radnor Township School District. As Anna Marie has stated, our children could greatly benefit from curriculum that addresses systemic racism and religious tolerance at the elementary and secondary levels in age-appropriate doses. Our children have so many questions about social justice. Why not take this opportunity to educate them and help them to grow in understanding and empathy rather than fear, which can happen if not addressed. We shouldn't implement such important lessons in haste or as a reaction to current events, but should consider researching how to better educate our students about racial and religious tolerance because students are hungry for appropriate information. As a parent of 2 children at Wayne Elementary, I think it is important and timely that we give it to them. Will this be something that the district will consider? And lastly, for now, from Dorothy Potash. I would like to add my voice as a parent of 2 children in the RTSD school system, one a rising 7th grader and one a rising senior, as a member of the Radnor community, to the many others who would like to see age-appropriate education about racial and religious tolerance, equity, and literacy in our RTSD K-12 curriculum. There are many ways to approach and offer this type of curriculum, and though I know Radnor has in the past offered some components, I strongly urge all of you to consider doing more. And the issues that confront all of us and our country as a whole are complex and will take a sustained effort to correct. I'm a strong believer that creating community and tolerance must start at the earliest ages, and that focus must continue and grow age appropriately to meet the intellectual needs and understanding of our kids as they grow. As a business development coach who works with professional service folks, I see the long-term impacts of what lack of focus and effort to change perceptions, eradicate bias, and encourage and compel tolerance has left us now to fix. Further, we need to ensure that all of our students feel empowered and celebrated and are given the tools and education that will be required of them to understand one another's differences, see their commonalities, and how they can apply this knowledge to continue to improve our communities as they mature. Many around are living examples of white privilege living in a bubble. It is our responsibility to ensure that we do everything we can to broaden our students' understanding of the larger world of one another and to give them the tools so that they will be able to build a better world. I hope that our board members, our teachers, and our leaders will spend an appropriate amount of time with African American members of our community, leaders of diverse community organizations across the country, and perhaps expand our relationships with those organizations whose mission it is to ensure tolerance and educational specialists to understand how to effectively incorporate a curriculum of tolerance and community building and real American history into our student programs. And that is all.
Right.
Vivian,
Thank you.
Can I make a quick request? I'm sorry. I just, along the lines of Ms. Goldman's comment, some of those went by kind of fast, and also there were a lot of really good ideas. Can I impose on you, Mr. Petiti? I'd like it if you would forward each of those emails to me. I'm seeing head nods that maybe the rest of the committee would appreciate actually getting those emails directly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Petiti. And I also want to thank everyone who contributed public comment. I want to just express my own opinion that this is a really important conversation, and I really appreciate people contributing to the conversation. And I believe we're going to start touching on that today in our curriculum agenda. So let's move on to our agenda now. The first item is the approval of the June 2nd, 2020 Curriculum Committee meeting minutes. Members of the committee, anybody have any issues, comments? Okay, I think they're fine as well. So they will stand as written. And that brings us now to agenda items. We'll start with 4.1, which is the board agenda action items for our business meeting. Mr. Bechtold.
Okay, so we have a couple different board action items that we're asking to take forward. We have some acceptance of grants and donations that we'd like to move forward. So REF is providing for the Adventurous program, the Girls Lead program at the middle school, and for school supplies at Wayne Elementary School. We had the approval of the reapplication of the Dreer and Creston scholarships, and the names of the students will be on the board business meeting next week. And we also have a Power School license for the next school year. And we have the graduation audio and live streaming services for our graduation program that was done at the high school last week. Many thanks to Mrs. Kevgis and her assistant principals and all the teachers that worked to pull that off for our students. And then we also have a Right at School approval, which is our before care and after care provider. And I know that Mr. Dukevich worked on the Right at School contract with them, and so I think he has a couple things to say about that as well.
So I have just a technicality before I ask the other committee members for their questions. We used to have someone from the administration, I believe it was Dr. McQuiggan, who was a member of the REF, I guess went to the meetings and suggested things that were in line with our curriculum objectives. Is someone now continuing that role and advising REF on the appropriate, or just, the highest use of their funds at this point?
Yeah, so last week there was 2 meetings which I participated in, and also Ms. Duffy also serves as a representative for the group, and she was there at both meetings as well. So yes.
Okay, so that we're still closing that loop. Great. Committee members, anybody have anything with regard to these action items? There's a lot on here. Sarah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm working on 2 different devices and I was trying to unmute with the wrong one. I wanted to hear more about the Right at School program, and maybe Mr. Dukevich, when he presents on that. I feel like I recall a comment at some point during the year that the fees being charged to the families in Radnor Township are higher than the fees in other districts. And I know with the changeover, I'm not sure you had heard that, or I just wanted to ask if if we've tried to address that. I don't think that Radnor is so much more affluent than Montgomery County, or that we're getting, or not Montgomery, Lower Merion or TE, that there should be a significant difference in what's being charged to our families. And certainly, I don't think that we're charging more for our facilities in any way. So I wanted to just make sure that that's been addressed. And then I think, Mr. Bechtold, that you're probably on top of this, but I know that in prior years, we've had questions or concerns about making sure that the schools aren't kind of doing an end run around curriculum and getting things that they want that don't comply with our programs from a REF grant. So that if you know, the district says we actually have this technology plan, and a building can't say, actually, we have a separate technology plan and we're going to go get a grant. I assume that's kind of part of the role that you're filling, in addition to making sure that REF isn't only getting requests for grants or granting grants to one of the various buildings. I know there have been concerns in the past that maybe one or two of the elementary schools is benefiting more than others. And that's not a criticism, more it's, I think, been a result of who was asking for grants. But if you could both just address those in your comments, that'd be really helpful.
Sure, and I'll address the last comment first. So there is a committee, a grants committee that goes and is made up of diverse stakeholders that hears presentations about the grants. The three that we are asking the board to accept are all renewals. And so the Adventures program has been going on for probably 4 years or so at the high school. And that is in collaboration with the Alumni Association. Chris Massaro helped get that off the ground, and it provides an opportunity for our students to participate in a Shark Tank-like competition. And then the next one for the middle school, which is the Girls Lead program, is a renewal as well, and that is something that was well received this year. And so that was requested for renewal, and it was very popular. And then the school supplies is something that we've been doing for years as well. That there's actually a designated fundraiser that takes place in the spring to prepare and get school supplies for the fall for students at Wayne Elementary, and that is something that's been perpetually happening. What I'll say is that the grants committee goes and receives all the grants, and everyone that submits a grant has the opportunity to come and present in front of the grants committee. And then there is a rubric and dialogue, you know, so all the schools have an equal shot. Anybody that goes and puts one in, it's a very thoughtful process. And one of the things that Mr. Dukovich and I have also taken turns going and hearing grant proposals. And all of the central office administrators review the grants prior to the grants meeting, because we do want to make sure that anything that gets approved by REF is not in conflict with our program. So we wouldn't want to go and have a well-intended person request a whole bunch of technology for REF that we cannot support, and then have them say, okay, we've approved this, and then we're like, well, we can't use it. So those processes are also already in place.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Amy, I think you were indicating.
Mr. Bechtold answered my questions for the most part. I was going to ask about the Adventurist and the Girls Lead program. But just to clarify, those are not student clubs. Those are school-initiated programs.
So, and I know that we've got Dr. Weidlich on here. He could speak a little bit more to the Girls Lead program if we need him to, but both of those programs are something that it's not like, I guess when you're saying student clubs, it's an extracurricular activity not related to the curriculum where any student can go and apply to join those and participate in those. So it's very open as far as who would be accepted into those different programs.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dukovich, would you like to speak a little bit about the Right at School program?
Absolutely, absolutely. As Dan mentioned, Right at School is our K-5 before and after care provider. They started with us this current school year, 1920. And also for two of our schools, Ress and West, Wayne and Radnor, they provide after-school clubs for the first time this year, which was a great asset for both of those buildings. Ithan still runs after-school clubs, but their PTO preferred to facilitate them on their own. Heather Esposito, who's with us tonight as well, was a huge help in working with Wright School this year before I arrived in October, and she and I have worked with them throughout the rest of the year. There's a lot of positives with Wright School this year. I mean, this was the first year of implementation, and to Mrs. Dunn's point, there was two main concerns from parents throughout the year that we heard a number of times. Wright School issued a survey, a formal survey in December to solicit feedback. And then throughout the year, the building principals and others have received unsolicited feedback, both positive and some critical feedback. In most cases, the critical feedback landed in two ways. One, generally the coordination of the Radnor program, the leadership of the Radnor program from Wright School specifically. There was concerns around the leadership. And secondly, as Mrs. Dunn alluded to, the cost differences specifically to another district in our region with a similar demographic that Radnor has. There are other regional school districts that Wright School will operate in, but there was a specific demographic with a local district that made some folks upset. So in the process of working through our contract for the next school year, we saw a lot of positives with Wright School, and in working with them, the two major issues that were concerns, the leadership and coordination of the program and the contract pricing, have both been addressed. Beginning next school year, there will be a new coordinator for Radnor Township, as well as an area coordinator. And combined, they have over 30 years experience running before and after care programs in school districts. And secondly, our contract for next year, there'll be no increases in prices. There will be a 5% decrease in one of our 5-day options for parents. And compared to that same district that was in question, all of the Radnor prices will now be the same or less in all but one category. And so there's 25 price options, and 24 of those will be the same or less than the district that was in question prior. So I feel like we've corrected both of the major concerns. We feel good about moving forward, and we think that Wright School is a partner and is looking to improve the process for next year and beyond. So we feel pretty good about a second year with them.
I should also say that it came up, I guess, in our planning meeting, that Wright at School was willing to sort of bridge any daycare concerns that might come up depending on how we open school in the fall. Now, it looks like we'll have elementary back probably, but if that doesn't prove to be the case, they were willing to sort of, meet the needs that we might have for daycare for families if school isn't operating, under a normal schedule. So they seem pretty accommodating to what we need. I should just probably add that because I did pick that up from our conversation. I wanted to ask about the Power School contract again. And I can't remember the answer to this, but is there a cost savings to doing more than a 1-year contract? There's a reason we're just doing a 1-year contract, correct?
So we've got a new director of technology, and Dr. Handit's coming on, and we have had eSchool, which was acquired by Power School for as long as I've been here, and this is my 9th year here in the district. We have Schoology, which we've had probably for 7 or 8 years. And we just re-upped a 1-year with Schoology, which is our LMS. So we're looking at our student information system, which is our SIS, and which is Power School. And we want to take the opportunity to really analyze both our student information system and our learning management system, and not lock ourselves into a long-term deal. We think that the timing is right for us to really take a look at it. Doesn't mean that we would not be continuing with Power School, which acquired eSchool, or Schoology, but we wanted to really get some feedback from our teachers, from our students, look at, is it meeting our needs, and give us that opportunity to really take a dive in with with Dr. Hand starting. And that is something that I'll say that Dr. McCook, who's also on the call, we had talked about taking a look at this earlier in the year as well. So this is something that we feel very comfortable with as far as making sure that we are thoughtfully analyzing both our student information system and our learning management system. And so we're asking the board to approve this 1 year, and we will have further information a year from now as to a longer term deal with PowerSchool and most likely Schoology as well, or other options that we explored and how we came to those determinations.
Okay, so we're not taking a huge financial hit though by just doing a 1 year. I understand that we want to look at it. It's not really costing us a premium to do it this way. Is that?
While there are economies of scale, we are not taking a bath by going on a 1 year.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anybody else? Andrew, anything with regard to the board action items? Okay. Any other comments from administration on the action items? All right, let's move to item 4.2, the equity programs update. Mr. Bechtold.
And before Mr. Bechtold jumps in, if I could just jump in. First off, I just wanted to say thank you to all the public commenters. It's important with all topics, and especially this topic, the voices of our community and listening and engaging in that dialogue and discussion is important to us as a district. The Radnor community, our community, draws our strength from our common goal to support each other every day. We talk a lot about that our common strength is also about unlocking the potential in all of our students every day and unlocking the potential in all of us as a community. By embracing all of our differences, our bond is always enriched as a district and as a community. We stand together against words, actions, and insinuations that are racist, hateful, or prejudiced. We are a safe and supportive community where everyone is valued, and we will always make that a hallmark of a Radnor education. I was struck by some of the comments. Sitting on my desk is a paperweight that was a gift to me several years ago when I was a principal. And on that paperweight is the quote from Gandhi. And it says that, to be the change you wish to see in the world. And that has always been true in education. And it is even more important today that we all need to be that change that we want to see in the world. Based on the comments and the feedback we've been getting from the community, I asked the administrative team for tonight, to change the agenda up a little bit from what we had anticipated 2 weeks ago, and, to share instead and to really go back and talk about some of the things we talked about during this school year. The topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion has been a focus for the Radnor Township School District for many years now, and it will continue to be a focus for us. Our work is far from being done. It is something that we are going to continue to work on. And I had asked the administrative team to just put together and share some of the things that we had already, spoken of this year, and then also talk about how this discussion and dialogue will continue into the future. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bechtold with that introduction. I want to thank the administrative team for putting something together so quickly tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update about our diversity, equity, and inclusion program here in Radnor. A commitment to continuous improvement in this area is not new to RTSD, as Mr. Batchelor said. Dating back to 2015, Dr. Anthony Stevenson, who was serving as our Director of Secondary Education, helped the high school to begin this work. I won't go through all of these slides for those of you that are at home slide by slide, as these were presented last spring. However, I think it's important context for people who are tuning into the conversation for the first time, that RTSD has been actively working to provide professional development to our employees and support for and opportunities for our student body since 2015. Make no mistake, as Mr. Batchelor said, there is much work to be done still, and we are deeply committed to continuing that work. Tonight, you will hear from a representative from each of our different levels, as well as about our next steps that we will be taking. So to kick off what has been done this school year at each of the different levels, we will turn the program over to Dr. Anthony Stevenson, who will be speaking about the work that Radnor Elementary School has done this year with our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Initiative.
Thank you, Director Bechtel. And good evening to members of the committee and members of this larger community that's listening. At Radnor Elementary, the elementary schools were independent in this year and working on various equity, inclusion, and diversity initiatives. And for Radnor Elementary, one of the things that we did was one of the initiatives that we started with the support of PTO is that we implemented our responsive classroom. And the responsive classroom is trying to about building community, which is a big part of when we talk about this initiative that we're talking about, the capacity for community across all lines. And so that was a major one. At Radnor Elementary, we had, again, with the support of our PTO, we started a book club, and it was a voluntary book club in which we read the book White Fragility. In White Fragility, 20 members of our staff across not only teachers, but members of our staff were met on a monthly basis, and we talked about not only the guiding questions from the book, but also how it relate to how we could build capacity at our school. The purpose of this club was to, as a springboard for a larger conversation that we hope to have in the long run in our school. The next one is that our school, like all of the schools, the district is a part of what is called the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence and Equity. And what they do is that they have a group of districts from Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Delaware that meet on a monthly, and where representatives go and have conversations about how do we address the issues around equity and supporting the needs of our students. And we've had representatives from our school as the other schools have had as well. Our schools had our annual Multicultural Week in which we focus each year on a country or in culture. This year it was the focus of South Korea. And we also had gender, sexuality, professional development, where we had a speaker from CHOP who talked about to our staff on both levels about gender, sexuality, to talk about that, and had an ongoing professional development with that. So that is a snapshot of what we have done at Radnor for this year.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. Next, we'll have Ms. Heather Gillian Esposito speak to the work that was done at Ithan Elementary School and Wayne Elementary School.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Bechtel. At Ithan Elementary School, similarly at Wayne Elementary School, a diversity, equity, and inclusion team was established for professionals within the staff to come together and talk about ways to build culture and focus on inclusion throughout the school. Specifically at Ithan, Ms. Jones, who's the guidance counselor, went into grade levels, into individual classrooms where she was able to create and deliver lessons focusing on inclusion, as well as those positive interactions. Similarly, at Ithan and at Wayne Elementary School, just like Radnor Elementary School, morning meetings is really a crux of what the curriculum is about. The day starts with students in their regular education classrooms coming together to participate in a responsive classroom morning meeting. The focus there, as Dr. Stevenson had alluded to, is really in developing a sense of community where students feel safe, where they understand that they can take risks and they have an opportunity to share and to learn about one another. At Ithan Elementary School specifically, they started to include a closing circle at the end of the day, which is another tenet of responsive classroom and a nice opportunity for students to conclude their day on a positive note, and an opportunity again to feel that sense of community and a sense of belonging, and to address issues as they come up throughout the day. At Ithan, Dr. Boland, the principal, attended DVCEE, as well as also through the Chester County Intermediate Unit, a principal council She did this along with Mrs. Ferguson and Dr. Kent from the middle school. The focus of the work of the CCIU was based on inclusion, bias, as it related to trauma and diversity, and really focusing on what strategies can be implemented within the school to help address all of those very important needs. At Wayne Elementary School, I'll just touch on some of the things that are different than the other elementary schools, and specifically Wayne, and I've spoken to this committee before about the differences of PBIS, or the school-wide positive program at Wayne. We have incorporated at Wayne Elementary School morning meetings, but PBIS has allowed for us to create some clear expectations for all students throughout the school in terms of what it is to be a student at Wayne: respectful, responsible, safe, and caring. We're in our 6th year of full implementation of the school-wide positive behavior program. And through this program, it has grown where we now have student ambassadors, and students are given opportunities to have leadership roles and a voice throughout the school. You don't just need to be an ambassador to have a voice. We create and have completed a school-wide survey, climate survey, that we conduct twice a year. New this year at Wayne Elementary School, what we were able to do was to take some of the results of that survey where students indicated perhaps that they didn't feel connected to school. One of the questions is, do you feel that you've got support with your teachers? And I'm rewording that at this point in time. And we created a small voices group where those students had an opportunity who maybe indicated not feeling a sense of connectivity or feeling included in the school to sit and meet with Mrs. Ferguson and Mrs. Stolstrom, our school librarian, and our school counselor, Mrs. Tracy, and have an opportunity to hear how we could help to make them feel more included in the school. Our goal prior to COVID-19 was to conduct our end of the year survey to see if the needle had changed a little bit in terms of students' impressions and their connection to our school, but we'll continue that work again next year. And the only other thing I would highlight from Wayne Elementary School is a partnership with the community, with St. David's Church in particular, where several of our staff members, both retired and current staff members, have worked collaboratively with St. David's Church to provide after-school tutoring and programming for students in our school 2 times a week, where the district will bus the students to the church, and then those students are picked up by their parents at the conclusion of the program.
Thank you. All right, next we've got Radnor Middle School, and we have Dr. Weidlich here to talk about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative at RMS. Dr.
Hi,
Weidlich.
good evening. Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. So Radnor Middle School this year, our students and our staff took place in, we had a lot of different programs and initiatives, I should say. First, we are a school that has been designated since about 2014 as a school where there's no place for hate. It's a program that has an ultimate goal of providing a more inclusive environment for every student in our building. Our activities within this program are aimed to reduce bias and bullying, increase appreciation for diversity, and build communities of respect. Another program that we have at Radnor Middle School is our WEB program, WEB standing for Where Everyone Belongs. The WEB program at RMS is an orientation and transition program that welcomes 6th graders and new students to make them feel welcomed, comfortable, and included throughout their first year at Radnor Middle School. It's built on the belief that students can help other students succeed. This program trains students to serve as mentors, positive role models, and trusted counterparts. We were very lucky to have a Speak Up series, and as a spin-off of the speaker series, our students wanted to form a student group. So we have a Speak Up student organization. The student group is open to all students where participant voice is pivotal. Students elect topics to discuss and act on that they feel are very critical to their lives. These topics can range from equity, inclusivity, relationships, varied biases, stress, etc. Our 6th grade they take part in a Kindness Matters initiative that really takes place throughout the whole year. It's a proactive and positive prevention initiative that the charge is to improve school climate, include all learners, increase student engagement within the school community. We have our Raider Day. We have Raider Day activities Within these activities, in addition to building relationships with adults within the building and building relationships amongst your grade level peers, lessons are provided to the students on topics such as acceptance, tolerance, bullying, and resilience. Mr. Bechtold mentioned Girls Lead. So this year was the first year at Radnor Middle School that our students had the opportunity to join this program, and we started it in grade 7 as a pilot. And basically, this is an opportunity for girls to take part in an organization where they could develop and enhance skills ranging from communication to decision making, conflict resolution, problem solving, and advocacy. And we are looking to move that group not only to 7th grade, but also to 8th grade as well. So we will be expanding that. We have our Best Buddies Club. It is a program that empowers the special abilities of people by helping them form meaningful relationships with peers, just building relationships, self-advocacy skills, communication skills, and so on and so forth. We have students who took part in the Student Leadership Institute for the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence in Equity, where the focus was to develop networks between schools and within schools, with the ultimate charge to approach topics of race, ethnicity, economics, gender, and really close any gaps. We also, I know a couple of schools did mention this, but we celebrate our Multicultural Week. We have a multicultural celebration at RMS that offers students and teachers and families to encounter and celebrate one another and highlight what they can bring to the community table. This week provides multiple opportunities for the school community to take part in fun and engaging lessons, activities, food sampling, and ultimately a community potluck dinner. All these activities look to strengthen the academic connections to student knowledge, background experiences, and ways of viewing the world. In terms of our academic programs at Radnor Middle School, all students do have the ability to override into an accelerated academic program, and that is an opportunity afforded to all students. We have our lottery-based integrated program where all students are encouraged to apply if that is something that they are interested in delving into. And all students, 6th, 7th, and 8th, have access to co-curricular and extracurricular programs, clubs, sports, etc. In terms of our staff members, so RMS staff members have attended trainings that Dr. Stevenson did mention that were provided by the Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence through the University of Pennsylvania. Our RMS staff members are part of the RTSD District Equity Team. Our RMS administrators, counselors, social worker, and teachers, we did begin developing our building-based diversity and equity team prior to the school closure. This team and the subsequent initiatives will continue for 2021. Our staff was trained and will continue to be trained on gender sexuality from CHOP's Gender and Sexuality Education Coordinator. And lastly, our RMS staff do facilitate kindness initiatives and Raider Day activities throughout the entire school year.
Thank you, Dr. Wiley. And last but certainly not least, we have Mrs. Kevgis, who will be representing the high school and speaking about the programs that the high school has in place. I will give a lot of credit. Radnor High School has really been on the forefront with this, and it's a lot of it's thanks to Mrs. Kevgis' leadership. So, Mrs. Kevgis.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me this evening. First of all, I'd like to piggyback off of what Mr. Bechtold has already said. You know, our work at Radnor High School began many years ago in 2015, and under the direction of Dr. Stevenson and Mr. Bechtold, you know, they truly were the leaders that I worked under and led me to have a passion for this work. And Mr. Batchelor, you know, coming in the past few years has been so supportive of all of our efforts and just wonderful in every way. So, you know, thank you to all of them. You know, I won't go into the early efforts of Radnor because I know Mr. Bechtold has that at the beginning part of the presentation, but I will talk about our most recent efforts the past couple of years in terms of our student programs and then also in terms of our teachers. So at the high school, we have a few affinity and groups in place. We have our SET group, which is our student equity team. We have our Girls Empowerment Group and our Dream Leadership Academy, both of which are in their second year. These groups look to work with our minority males and females to help them, explore many different topics, some of which could be, what it looks like to have a healthy relationship, how to interview for a job. There's a broad spectrum of, topics that they will tackle over the course of the year, what it means to have, peer relationships within the high school. We have our Black Student Union, which is now in our 4th year, and is growing, by leaps and bounds. All of these groups are. Our Jewish Student Union is our newest group that has come into play at the high school. Unfortunately, we didn't really get that too far off the ground with COVID coming in March, but we will certainly circle back to that. We had a wonderful group of students who were, working to make that a strong program along with administration. In terms of our academic programs for our students, we have what I'm extremely proud of, and I will always say, is our extended learning program, which is now in its 2nd year. Our extended learning program is after-school tutoring that takes place twice a week for all 4 core content areas: math, science, English, and social studies. We have Radnor teachers that work with our students after school. The program is open to all students, but we certainly look to include our historically underperforming students in that program. The program is free. It is not something that you need to register for. It's a drop-in service and open again to all students. One of the greatest parts is that our program is able to run because we have a very generous REF grant for transportation. So our students are able to get home after the program's over, and they have supplies and snacks and all the good things that they need thanks to our PTO. So we are so thankful of our community to help with that program. We have our AP Potential program that's been in place since Mr. Bechtold was principal, which looks at the PSAT scores of our students to try and identify those that are challenged or capable of challenging themselves in honors and AP courses. And we do that we spend a great deal of time in the summers. We develop schedules, and even before then, to really take a look and see what students we can, push into more challenging or rigorous courses that really have that capability. This past year, we had another multicultural week and our potluck dinner, which was, more popular than ever. I think we had over 400 people attend, which was certainly a record, and it was absolutely fantastic. I know Mrs. Goldman and I certainly enjoyed that evening and all the delicious food that was there. Looking at our teacher initiatives and professional development, we had our staff trained in 2018, 2019, then again this school year. They worked with Dr. Caprice Hollins, who runs Cultures Connecting. It's a company out of California, and she really is wonderful. Our staff adores her, and she does such great work. In the 2018-2019 school year, she really helped us to understand, what it meant to become culturally competent, and how do we become competent in terms of a staff, in terms of faculty, and really in terms of our student body. She helped our teachers to understand this past year what stereotype threat is and what implicit bias means, not only to understand it, but to identify it. We had some wonderful workshops with her in the fall, and she also helped us to learn how to screen resources for our curriculum, which is so important to make sure that we're hearing different voices throughout the 4 years that our students are at Radnor High School. The beautiful thing was, once Dr. Hollins worked with our equity team and got those, that training in place and help them understand how to do this, that in turn was shared with our faculty at large, and our faculty was trained to do so as well. And the conversations that it started and all the wonderful things that have come forth from those trainings are really, really incredible. Our teachers continue to challenge themselves in so many ways. Alicia Alfonso this past summer was trained in the SEED program. Our SEED program stands for Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. It's a national program in which they develop leaders, mostly teacher leaders, who help guide their peers in conversational communities about social justice. And so that has been a gift to us as a faculty, because Mrs. Alfonso Senora has taken that knowledge and training and worked with our faculty after school each month this year. And so that's just another layer of our programming that we have at the high school. I have to pause for a minute and really say that before I go on, I want to say thank you to my whole administrative team, but also to Mrs. Latour, who really took the lead this year as I moved into the principal position and has done wonderful, wonderful work with, not just our students, but our faculty as well. And, we've been just so thankful for all that she's done. The one last thing that I wanted to mention was, in addition to, the trainings that we had in place this year, we were able to run a similar book club to what Dr. Stevenson has down at RES. And actually, Ms. Latour and Dr. Stevenson, I know, we're working together in some capacity to read White Fragility. And as a faculty, the year before, we read Whistling Vivaldi. So we're continuing to look at, all the programs that we have in place, how we can expand them. We worked hard this year to still be a part of the DVCEE that Dr. Stevenson had spoken about and Dr. Weidlich, but also to create a district equity team so that the entire district, all 5 schools, could be part of those workshops because they are so valuable and so meaningful. So our work will continue. As Mr. Bechtold said, I'm very proud of our efforts, but there is certainly much more work to do, and we look forward to doing all that work in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepkes. As we look to the future, I am pleased to announce that Dr. Stevenson will be playing an enhanced role in leading our district's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. Dr. Stevenson, as I said earlier, was really the catalyst that got us started on this path back in 2015, bringing professional development and helping to plan years worth of work in this endeavor. He is currently an adjunct professor at both Villanova and Temple Universities, where he teaches in the School of Education and works with other school districts and educators regarding this topic. Dr. Stevenson will be discussing our next steps towards our continuous commitment towards the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative here in Radnor. Dr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Director Bechtold. As we look at the next steps, and as you saw, what is a snapshot of what the district is doing in the sense of trying to bring some sense of understanding for the staff and for the community. And it's clear that there needs to be more work done. And as I tell people every time when we talk about these kind of topics, it's important to understand that schools are a snapshot of society. And these things that we're addressing are not a lot of times formulated in schools, but it's important for us to be a part of the solutions. And the goals here that we're going to talk about is that number one is that the top goals is that we want every family, student, and employee feel welcome and safe in our schools, and that Radnor becomes a place where everyone who comes there feel that they're a part of it. And a part of that, by doing that, is celebrating diversity and where people feel that they're included. By celebrating diversity, it's important that you have to understand what differences are and differences across the board. And that's why when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, is that we want to make sure that on all aspects of every aspect of how we do business at school, that we're using that as a daily catalyst on there. And how we want to get there is we want to use some of these formulating pillars that we want to look at. And as we look at these pillars, we want to make sure that we have all our stakeholders a part of those conversations. And so as I go through these, I want everybody to keep in mind that these are things that are not just isolated, that we're talking about is from an administrative team, or we're expecting for teachers to do it, or to have just students. Is for all stakeholders, including parents and the community, to be a part of it. And our first one is that we want to make sure that we increase student engagement on the academic piece, where they have these learning opportunities, where every child has an opportunity to reach their potential, and that we put the things that in place that they have an opportunity to be successful in all of their curricular and extracurricular activities. And part of that is that which I appreciate the letters that came in today that talks about the pillar 2, is by doing that is to have increased cultural awareness of all of our teachers, administrative, and staff of what tools did we need to have in place in order to meet that pillar 1, in order to make sure that all of those students are successful. How do we do that? The third one becomes pillars is to make sure that all the stakeholders feel that they are a part of this process as we move in. And so one of the things that we're going to do is increase the community engagement and parental involvement in these discussions about this process. I plan this summer into the fall, meeting with individuals and small groups, talking about these ideas like the ideas that were presented tonight, to bring folks together to see where we can all have a place and to move ourselves in the right direction. And the last one becomes one, the fourth pillar is that we will continue our working towards recruiting, hiring, and retaining diverse staff, teachers, support staff, and administrators in our district to be reflective of our global and larger community as well.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. All right, at this time, we will open up the presentation to questions from the board.
All right. First of all, thank you, administrators, principals, for putting that together. Really, I think it helps us formulate the conversation that will continue, is to sort of know where we are and the things that are already in place. So I really appreciate sort of this update. And I do remember, and I have to sort of reflect back, that I remember we had a presentation on this. Dr. Babson and I were reminiscing about this back in the fall, where Ms. Kepkis, the principal at the high school, was sort of saying how this was a passion of hers and that this was going to be a focus, you know, in the district, at least at the high school. And I know now that other things are going on at the other schools. So I think this is sort of a starting point for the conversation, so everybody kind of knows what's in place, where we are. So I'm going to open this up to the committee members. I imagine there's a few questions. Who wants to start? Nobody? Everybody? Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah, please.
No, I know this is something we've talked about before because it's a particular passion of mine. I'm glad to see that it's something we've brought up, given, you know, current events in our country. I think it's important. I do appreciate the preface that Mr. Batchelor gave, which was this was something that people had to do somewhat last minute. I know there's been a lot of effort that's been put into this, and I'm not sure the presentation, at least what initially went up, fully reflects all the efforts of our administration. And, you know I've had very passionate conversations with PT and Mr. Batchelor about how important equity is, both to me and to them. And I appreciate that there may be concerns in the community that this isn't something we have spoken about publicly or demonstrated as publicly as people might like. So I think that that's a fair question. And so to that end, my first question was, do we have the equity plan and program somewhere posted prominently on our website? And this is where I admit I don't hang out on our website often. But if we don't, I think it would be helpful to the community to know that this is something that we value as much as we do, and make sure that it is somewhere that's easy for people to see. Clearly, we had a number of people who wrote in this evening, and it would have been helpful for them to be able to look at something like that and then give us feedback on the specific plan we have in place.
So because this is, we want to make sure that we're not being reactionary. And a lot of time people make decisions like this in the moment, rather than make a transition for creating a movement. And what we want to do is we want to make a movement on this. And what the plan, you just saw the plan. It's an outline of pillars. And what we want to do is build around those pillars. The reason why we call them pillars, it is going to set for the foundation for the plan. And so what I don't want to do is, I don't want the administration, I don't want the staff, I don't want the school board, I don't want the members of the community to feel like we created this plan and people are not a part of it. We want. That's why I said we're going to listen to the folks, get feedback, take in. So for instance, there was a student who graduated in 2014 who sent a whole list of reading materials that suggested those are the kind of things we're going to do, compile that information, and then create a comprehensive plan. What we talked about now is the short-term things just to talk about. We have some things in place, acknowledging that there is a lot of work to be done, and saying that our commitment is based on those pillars that Superintendent Batchelor has supported, and which will be led by the directors of teaching and learning, and supported through my work through the equity team for the district. We will come out with a plan probably ready in the fall or spring based on all of those components.
Okay. I would say, so last fall, a number of us attended the Pennsylvania School Board Association has a conference every fall. And as part of that, there's a 3-day conference where you can attend various programs about different issues in education. And I attended the one about equity in education. And one of the things that stuck with me, and I meant to bring up next time we talked about this, was that equity programs like this succeed in districts when it's not just one group that's trying to make sure that everyone else is listening. So I want to invite you, Dr. Stevenson, and certainly the rest of the administration, to make sure that you are holding the school board accountable for participating in this and helping you further it. That was one of the issues that was identified by the leader of the program I went to, was that when school boards don't show proper support for these things or don't get involved in the equity programs, that sometimes they lose community support. I mean, one of the services that we provide to the district is serving as a liaison to the community and talking about things that you're doing. So the more educated we are about what's going on, the more, and I hate to say too involved because I know that's not necessarily our role, but the more we know about it, the more we can help engage community members to help you with the plans and to give feedback, et cetera.
Well, I don't want to speak for Superintendent Batchelor or Director Bechtel, but one of the things that we did talk about is that of ongoing reporting back to the board about this. And part of this whole piece is that we will have school board members a part of those conversations as well.
Okay, that's great, and I appreciate it. A couple things that came up as I was reading this, and obviously, like you said, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. It shouldn't just be tonight. I know, because I sit on the finance committee and we talked about this at length, that one of the ways that we have found savings in next year's budget is cutting certain conference attendance. I wanted to just double check, and it may be that certain conferences aren't being offered, but that we didn't cut attendance at the diversity and equity in education program that's here.
No, so, and I can speak to that because I oversaw those conference cuts, Ms. Dunn. We did not, we kept our membership with the Delaware Valley Consortium of Equity and Excellence, and so that was not touched.
Great, that's wonderful.
And can I also just add to that? One of the things that's important, I think conferences are important, and I think the tools of the expertise are important, but it is also important to cultivate some organic pieces here. You know, I think it's wonderful to send people to conferences and come back and share out, but I think it is to have, how do we cultivate it here? And while the Delaware Valley Excellence is an excellent place where our neighboring districts and all get together, this is work that we're going to have to roll up our sleeves internally and do a whole lot of stuff. And I would rather us spend the next 2 to 3 years being close together and then sending people out than sending a bunch of people out and coming back here. And so I just wanted to say that if you don't hear that we're sending people out a lot of places, it's because that we want to really concentrate on how do we make this good here? Because here's the thing, we have so many resources here, as you heard from some of the parents who offered support. We have educators here and members of the board who have these backgrounds. So we're looking at folks to put in their time based on the needs here at the district.
Oh, that's great. The only other piece, and I don't think it's necessarily forgotten, I think you guys there was a lot to fit onto some of these PowerPoints. I'm pretty sure there's an LGBTQ, I say this more for members of the community who may be looking and thinking we've missed groups. I think that there's an LGBTQ support group at the high school. And I wanted to actually ask Dr. Weidlich if a student group has been formed at the middle school. I attended the Speak Up series last fall. I think it was in the fall, it may have been wintertime. And one of the issues that was brought up by the students was that they felt the need for a support group. And I didn't know, again, I know COVID happened. I know a lot of things got interrupted, but I just wanted to know if we've made sure we're bridging those gaps for those students as well.
Thank you very much. We are looking to bridge those gaps, and our school counselors and administrators had conversations with students who would like to bring an organization like a support group for kids to our building, and that is something that we will be delving into in 2021.
Okay, and I did see the CHOP education that teachers and faculty have been getting. So I appreciate that you put all this together. It's really helpful, and I understand that even when you aren't talking about this, this is something that you are all thinking about in the way that you run the district. So keep up the good work.
Ms. Dunn, I'm just going to jump in for a minute to answer your previous question about the high school. We do have our SAGA group, our Sexuality and Gender Alliance group, that is run by Mr. Carl Rosen and has been in place for easily 10, 12 years.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, thanks.
All right. Anything else, Sarah? You covered. Okay. Dr. Babson?
Sure. First of all, I just want to thank the administration for all their hard work. It should be clear from this presentation that efforts to both signal our intentions and our devotion to meeting the needs of all students in our community around issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion have been ongoing. And also, though, critically, that we have a plan that we are going to be committing actual resources, and we're going to actually be doing things around these issues. And I think that that is very important. I've talked with a number of people in the community, some of the people who chimed in tonight. And I think, as Anthony said very well, that we have a ton of resources here in the district. And if we can combine the resources with the good intentions and the dedication needed to carry out really meaningful change here, you know, I know that the atmosphere right now is rightfully very somber, and it's a time of great reflection and a lot of pain. But I think that I see a lot of positives in what we're doing here at the district, and I think it's very encouraging what we're doing. And you know, one final point I'll just say is that, well, maybe 2 points. Number one, I brought up to Dan and Sean in the curriculum meeting last week some ideas for curricular changes, and I'm going to be following up with Jim Kearney about that, and hopefully that will be the beginning of a discussion along those lines, or I'll be joining an ongoing discussion along those lines. So, for example, I'm trained as a cultural anthropologist who also studies education policy. So that could mean that we could develop some units around critical race theory, around post-colonial theory, ways for our students to engage academically in these issues that have such powerful relevance to all of our lives here in this country. Also, another idea, it's very encouraging to see the pillars. It's very encouraging to see these foundations upon which we are going to be doing this very important work, necessary work. You know, perhaps part of that will be, one of the pillars was getting the community involved. So we have a kind of ongoing task force about school finance that involves community members. Maybe we can have a diversity, equity, and inclusion community task force that comprises parents and students and district people. So those are just some ideas that I wanted to throw out. I know in my own work in teaching at Temple College of Ed and Penn GSE, that these issues are extremely top of mind for all educational professionals that I have taught or worked with, and the students at Penn GSE and Temple College of Ed. So we are right there. We are right in the thick of this, and I think it's fantastic that we are committed and laying the groundwork for meaningful action on these issues. So thank you again to the administration, Dan, Sean, Anthony, Ken, PT, Heather, everybody for this presentation tonight.
Right. Thank you, Andrew. Ms. Goldman.
Thank you also. The same, I'll echo all the thank yous that have been given previously to everybody who puts thought and energy into this. I would appreciate it if it's possible if we could get emailed that presentation that was shown tonight. There were some updates in there that I'd really love to have more of a chance to process. And because when I looked actually at the initial presentation, I realized I wrote down some overarching questions that sort of came to mind. And as I see this new version of the presentation, I realized that maybe what I was doing was creating my own personal set of pillars. So forgive me if they overlap, as I mentioned them, with what the new presentation has in it, but I couldn't absorb that that quickly. So
just, you know, they've updated. It is actually on board docs. When I realized it was different, I pulled it up there.
Okay,
So
yeah,
you'll be able to find it.
I'm not as facile with multitasking, pulling up Word docs and speaking at the same time. So there could be a little repetition, and I apologize in advance. But and I want to echo also something that Dr. Babson said, which is I think that every respectable organization in America is now doing a whole lot of self-examination, and we should all participate in that. I think it's really important. And as a board, first and foremost, I believe strongly we should lead the way in that self-reflection and self-examination. And I think from the sentiments expressed here and offline that the board is ready and willing to do that. And Dr. Stevenson, you raised a question, how do we cultivate it here? Which I think is a really good question. And it's kind of the kickoff to my reflection as we came into this meeting, because one of the things that I think it's really important to understand, especially since we're an educational entity, is what is equity and how do we define it here in Radnor? And I think that there are standing definitions of equity, but they can vary to some extent from community to community based on demographics and needs. And so I think it would be really helpful to know for all of us, what is equity? What is diversity? What is inclusion? I remember it was defined in the April 2019 curriculum committee report that was put forth by the high school, where they had definitions on each of the slides. But I think it's something that's probably, for me, the beginning of any meaningful conversation is to understand what it is that we're really talking about and make sure that that is a definition that is exposed to every member of our community, not just our faculty, not just the administration, not the board, but students and parents, and everybody understands exactly what we mean when we say equity and how we define it here in Radnor. And probably what would help us best define it in Radnor is looking at our data, for start, our qualitative and quantitative data, which I don't know if it's one of the pillars or not, or if it should be. But understanding who our population is. I took a quick look at our most recent annual data report, which gives us demographic information from 2018-19. And it's really important to know who we are. We are as self-identified by families, 71% of students are identified as white, and 29% are students of color. We have a 10% economically disadvantaged population. We have 3% of our population is English learners. So we have right there a whole lot of equity based on how you define it to be thinking of as we make decisions about how we want to deliver an educational program now and going forward that meets the needs of every student in our community. In terms of another pillar, I was thinking about, what do we want to achieve when it comes to equity? Is that really defined? Do we know what we want out of the efforts and resources we are devoting to all of this? What types of action plans and resources do we need to develop? What can we do in the short term? What should we be looking for in the long term? And who are the voices needed in the mix? I think it's great that we are ready to involve a larger swath of the community, but are we going to be really intentional and make sure that the voices who need to be in the mix there come forth to the best extent possible? Who are those voices, and how can we encourage them to participate? How will we assess our progress as we go along? And how are we going to measure our results? How will we know if we are achieving equity? So, and there were a lot of comments in the made this evening that were all wonderful, and I'm looking forward to getting those to read them again when we have more time to hear them and think about them. I did hear a lot about curriculum, and I think curriculum is really important, obviously, but curriculum is really a broad term. You know, I think we have to be really thoughtful about what does curriculum mean? Does that mean that the textbooks and materials and experiences that our students have will be those that help our students better appreciate what equity, diversity, and inclusion are all about? But what about our policies and our practices and our training and behaviors? You know, we've heard these terms, microaggressions and implicit biases, that we're all guilty of. I mean, we all need to know more about them and do better at them. Is that something that is considered part of our curriculum? I guess my question is, how exactly do we define curriculum? We often refer to achievement gaps and wanting to help do what we can to close those. I've recently become more aware that there are also pretty persistent opportunity gaps, not just in Radnor, but everywhere. And opportunity gaps and achievement gaps are two different things. So are we going to be very intentional about looking at it holistically at our educational system and try to bridge opportunity gaps as best we can as we also address achievement gaps? And then I think somebody else mentioned it before, and I think this was one of Dr. Stevenson's pillars, and that is to have representation among our professional staff and our school board, for that matter, hopefully at some point in time, that is more representative of the people in our community. If we are 29% people of color, non-white, as our data says that it is, you know, that we've got a ways to go in creating, being a touch point for people who want someone who can identify with them more directly and understand more of who they are, what their cultural and societal experiences are. So I've often thought that, I've heard that it's been difficult to find a more diverse staff. But one of the things I wonder is, is there anything we can do as an educational entity to sort of foster the love of teaching right here within our school district? I frankly think it's an opportunity for school districts everywhere to expose students to the joys of teaching. And perhaps we could solve what's an even larger problem, which is a shortage of teachers right now. Is there anything we can be doing that way? So I think that we have in summary, I think we have a tremendous opportunity here, and I see a great willingness on the part of our community and staff and the school board. And I'm sure our students, we've heard student voices about this recently too, in many different forums. So we have a community that on the whole is ready and willing to engage in this work. And I think it's a real opportunity. And, I'm just eager for us to get started. So thank you all for allowing us to begin to have this conversation tonight. And I hope it's one of many that we have going forward.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody who contributed. Fantastic conversation. This is really a great start. I love the tone of it, and I love the ideas coming out. And so definitely more to follow with regard to this topic. And yeah, it's just really, I'm just so encouraged to hear, just the way that this is progressing. So hopefully, we're starting off on a good foot here. Let's see, we've got quite a lot still on the agenda, so let's move on.
So, Mrs. Solomon, can I make a recommendation? We have all the librarians here. I'm very confident that they can get their presentation done in the next 25 minutes or so. Yeah. So I'd like to actually push the PE for athletes to a later time, and even if that would be next into August to get the librarians to have their presentation.
Yeah, excellent idea. So let's move. This will now be agenda item 4.4, the update from our librarians, which was always a great highlight. So let's hand it to the librarians.
Thank you.
I believe that Mrs. Dahlstrom's going to kick us off.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you, and we're very excited about our library curriculum review. So all the librarians are here. I'd like to introduce Melissa McCoy from Ithan, Amy Pichata from Radnor, Sue Dahlstrom from Wayne, Catherine Horan from the middle school, and Michelle Wetzel from the high school. So we want to begin by thanking you for the support of our program through budget funding and through staff support. We appreciate having full-time clerks. We've also want to thank you for the budgets that we have. The electronic resources funded through our budgets really were integral in the extended closure process. Is someone going to put our slideshow up, or I thought somebody else was going to do that?
You know what? I think that Mr. Dukevich is having technology problems, so I will bring that up.
Okay, thank you. We were asked to talk a little bit about what the librarians were doing during the extended closure. And when I asked the librarians, they said, what weren't we doing? But in all reality, we want to share with you that we did read alouds, we did weekly lessons, and we presented those as a some more, because some of the feedback we got from our families was that often multiple students in a family had one piece of technology. So we designed our lessons so they could be done as a family. We helped with resource location. We did book talks. We did office hours. We led professional development sessions, for instance, on how to access ebooks. We created suggested reading lists, and we did individual consultation with teachers and students. And as I said to Lydia when we kind of talked about our agenda before this meeting, I do have to give a shout out because there was a contest, a video contest for the Pennsylvania school librarians of what were people doing during the, what were librarians doing during the lockdown for, and we are proud to say that 2 of our librarians, Melissa and Amy, won that video contest. So we're very proud of our Radnor librarians. We want to start by sharing our current status with you. Currently, elementary students are on a fixed schedule and they attend library class, a 50-minute class each 5-day cycle. At the middle school, our instruction is delivered in a flexible format for 6th grade. Each student comes for one 15-day cycle per year. In 7th and 8th grade, our library curriculum is delivered in integration with content area classes. For example, the digital citizenship lessons are taught in social studies classes 2 times a year. The high school also has a flexible schedule, and the curriculum there is delivered in collaboration with content area teachers. We want to tell you what we did to get ready for our new curriculum. We read articles on best practice. We investigated the maker movement, which is a cultural trend that places value on an individual's ability to be a creator as well as a consumer. And the elementary libraries received an REF grant to get us started on putting some maker materials in our library. So shout out to REF. We visited 4 different school districts, Lower Merion, Garnet Valley, North Penn, and Centennial, to observe best practice and observe their physical spaces as well. We attended our Pennsylvania School Librarian Association's conferences, where we received instruction on the new American Association of School Librarian Standards, and also the model curriculum updates, which I'm going to refer to a little bit later in our presentation. We worked with Dr. Rachel Skurlock-Lowe, a Radnor parent and Villanova education professor, on a diversity audit, and we use as a source for our collection development the We Need Diverse Books materials. We also looked at STEM integration, which leads me to something else, that another exciting development in Radnor. In December and January of last year, Sean and Libby Corman and I wrote a grant sponsored by the governor, a PA Smart Grant. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you, Dan. For a PA Smart Grant for elementary STEM. And we were awarded a $35,000 grant in February. In March, we partnered with the Chester County Intermediate Unit to offer Radnor staff 12 graduate credits. And starting in just a couple weeks, I'm just so excited to let you know that 29 elementary teachers will begin the CCIU STEM endorsement. And I'm so excited about the implications of that in so many areas and moving forward our elementary STEM curriculum. So it was announced at an earlier meeting, but we got the numbers now to tell you how we're moving forward. Our curriculum is based on the model curriculum for learners and Pennsylvania school librarians, and the curriculum evolved out of looking at the Pennsylvania academic standards, 43 of which school librarians can take primary teaching responsibility for, in addition to 14 standards that we can partner with other teachers to support. These standards come from English language arts, reading and writing in science and technology and technical subjects, reading and writing in history and social studies, career education and work, that's a new area for us, business, computer, and information technology. And this year, our new curriculum also includes the Pennsylvania Career Ready Skills Continuum, which is based on CASEL, Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And I think you see that CASEL show up a lot in our work done by our special education department. We also integrated the American Association of School Library Standards for Learners and the International Society of Technology and Education, or ISTE standards for students. So everyone take a deep breath. Those are a lot of standards, and we're really proud of the work that our professional organization did to incorporate all those different standards into our new library curriculum. So Catherine, can you share, I think we're on you, to share our mission.
All right, thank you, Sue. So the RTSD library program mission statement is as follows. An effective school library program has a certified school librarian, provides personalized learning environments, and offers equitable access to resources to ensure a well-rounded education for every student. Radnor School Library programs focus on building flexible learning environments with the goal of educating successful learners skilled in multiple literacies. So in RTSD, librarians wear many hats in their role. We teach classes, help students choose and utilize print and online resources. We plan and implement library programs, collaborate with teachers, procure resources, both online and in print, participate in district and state committees, and the list goes on. With the extended closure this spring, our roles expanded even more to include a lot of the things that are stated in that mission statement. So from the mission statement comes the library philosophy and common beliefs that reflect the many roles the library program plays in our school community. So you can see there are 6 common beliefs. The school library is a unique and essential part of a learning community. Qualified school librarians lead effective school libraries. Learners should be prepared for college, career, and life. Reading is the core of personal and academic competency. Intellectual freedom is every learner's right. And information technologies must be appropriately integrated and equitably available. You can see in number 3, the reference to the college and career readiness standards, which include the teaching of social emotional skills, as Sue mentioned. And in number 4, we were excited to see a renewed focus on reading as the core of personal and academic competency. And number 6 applies directly to the extended closure we had this spring due to the pandemic, with information technologies being appropriately integrated and, of course, equitably available. That was the important key. So these common beliefs lead us into our big ideas for learners. And you can see when you look at the model curriculum document how all of these big ideas fit in. The first one is inquire. Learners build new knowledge by inquiring, reading, thinking critically, identifying problems, and developing strategies for solving problems. include number 2, learners demonstrate an understanding of and commitment to inclusiveness and respect for diversity in the learning community. We spent a lot of time earlier in this meeting talking about those things, and we were excited to see that that curriculum that the state came up with made this one of their big ideas for learners. The third is to collaborate. Learners work effectively with others to broaden perspectives and work toward common goals. Curate. Learners make meaning for themselves and others by collecting, organizing, and sharing resources of personal relevance. Explore. Learners read, discover, and innovate with a growth mindset developed through experience and reflection. And the last one, engage. Learners demonstrate safe, legal, and ethical creation and sharing of knowledge while engaging in a community and an interconnected world. The 6 ideas that they've chosen as their big ideas certainly include a lot of the things that we spoke about. So libraries, as that central role in the school community, are going to touch upon those. The 6 big ideas then move into the long-term transfer goals. And the long-term transfer goals of the model curriculum are in the same 4 domains as the AASL standards. So you can see that these 4 long-term goals are really identifying the fundamental understandings, knowledge, and skills learners should develop and what learners should be able to do when they confront new challenges both in and out of school. Each goal in the model curriculum, it's noted there which domain it is aligned with. So we have explore various perspectives, gain knowledge, and satisfy personal curiosity as readers and critical thinkers. Engage in an inquiry process to draw conclusions, make informed decisions, and create new knowledge. Collaborate, share knowledge, and participate ethically and productively as responsible citizens, and pursue personal growth and enjoyment through seeking knowledge and reflection.
So we want you to be sure to know that digital citizenship is large in our curriculum. We've adopted the Common Sense Education curriculum, and it includes 6 modules. The curriculum has been newly updated and really speaks to a lot of the challenges that our students are experiencing. So the 6 modules are media balance and well-being, privacy and security, digital footprint and identity, relationships and communication, cyberbullying, digital drama and hate speech, news and media literacy, all really relevant to where our students are right now. I got a lot of emails during the extended closure from both parents and students saying how critical this curriculum was while their students were spending more and more time online. And I got notes from students saying, oh, I got an invitation to do this, but you told me never to give away personal information. So we feel our curriculum is really robust and has served our students well while they've been spending more time online. So all of those commitments then lead us down to the nitty-gritty of what do our lessons, what do our units look like. So we wanted to share a common assessment. We told you what we're teaching. Now how are we going to know if the students have engaged or gotten what we want them to learn? So here's an example from grade 1. In the first marking period, our unit is library citizenship, and students are creating a bookmark with 4 book care rules. So they're engaging, they're collaborating with other people, they're inquiring, they're learning how the library works. In marking period 2, our unit is research, and we're asking the students to research 2 winter holidays that their family doesn't celebrate. So this is another way to include perspectives from other cultures and help students understand and learn about other religions and cultures. And they're making the choice of what holidays they want to do. So learning to curate and explore based on their own personal interest. And the third marking period, our unit is digital citizenship. We're working in collaboration with the first grade teachers. Their science for the third marking period is butterflies. And so we research a different insect in the library. We use the library, both electronic and print resources to take notes. And even in first grade, we're teaching the students the importance of digital citizenship and giving credit to their sources. Catherine? Your mic is off. Turn your mic on. There you go.
Sorry about that. At the middle school level, the library curriculum is delivered within the context of classes and in collaboration with core and elective teachers. This provides a more authentic experience for students in which they can learn and practice their research skills. The first common assessment that we do at the middle school is done in collaboration with social studies, as one of their common assessments is a research assignment. The students are assessed on their ability to create a bibliography in Noodle Tools, which they've learned all throughout elementary as well as 6th grade. The second marking period is a digital citizenship lesson, and that is on media use. And for those lessons, I push into the social studies classes. We do at least 2 a year. The first one on media use, excuse me, talks about media use and balance. And the second one is social media. So we focus on teaching students how to be safe and utilize social media to connect as global citizens, but in a safe way. They're a starting point, those lessons, for conversations with students. They're definitely not a one and done approach. And as you saw in elementary, we do digital citizenship lessons as well. And you'll see in high school that we continue that. So the 10th grade example, Mrs. Wetzel does 3 assessments. The high school library program has a flexible schedule as well. So she collaborates with subject area teachers to deliver the curriculum. The first assessment is assessing the student's ability to use Mac and VIA, which is one of our ebook and audiobook platforms. The second mark-in period assessment is research, and has students looking for as many different sources as possible for a news story and varying their sources. They're also looking at how to identify fake news and one step they can take to challenge their confirmation bias and why it's important to do so. The third common assessment in 10th grade is part of the digital citizenship curriculum, and that's part of a lesson that helps students understand the potential effects on their health in relation to screen time. And now Sue's gonna wrap up for us.
So moving forward, we want to continue investigating the STEAM and maker movement, where we want to make sure that we keep reminding ourselves that the middle school and high school libraries need some renovations, especially in terms of creating flexible learning spaces. And we also want to expand our e-resources. We feel that now that students have been thrown into the whole digital world and have a lot of experience now with e-resources, we want to continue to provide them for our students. And finally, I want to let you know that if you approve our curriculum, we're very proud to say that the Radnor Township School District Library curriculum will be the first board-approved curriculum based on the updated model curriculum for learners in Pennsylvania school libraries. So we thank you so much for your attention. We're very proud of our program and the strength of our librarians as a team, and we're happy to entertain questions at this point.
I need to note that you cited all your work, like good librarians. It's so exciting to hear this. Like we are so fortunate in Radnor to have really leaders in the state in terms of library science. So thank you so much. It's really exciting to hear what our students are able to take part in. Committee members, anybody have any questions that come off this presentation? Amy and Dr. Babson?
I'll just say every time the librarians present, it's we must have the strongest library. We have a lot of wonderful staff members all throughout the district, but the librarians seem to make a special effort to let us know how much they're on the cutting edge of everything. So
thank you, Amy.
It's no surprise that we'll be the first board to be approving this curriculum at our next business meeting. So thanks for caring so much about keeping up with all of the best practices and newest developments and resources. It's really important, and we're very fortunate. I want to thank the community. We're very fortunate to be able to have a fully staffed library system in our district. There are many districts that don't.
Absolutely.
And it's not lost on me as we listen to this presentation just how fortunate our students are, thanks to our community being willing to support it, and our district's commitment to it, that we have the robust library program that we do.
Here, here.
right, so I believe the committee is in unanimous support of approving this library plan. We should probably just say that I believe the library program was in audit this year. Is that correct, Mr. Bechtel? And so we're
Yes,
doing
actually,
this. Go ahead.
Mr. Dukevich oversees library as a curricular area, so he can certainly answer that.
Yes, that's correct. I apologize. I've been having some Wi-Fi issues all day today. I got dropped right before the beginning of the presentation. Not convenient. But I want to applaud the librarians for their work. I would agree with the sentiments of the board that we're very fortunate. In my 20 years experience, they are the strongest librarian team I've worked with. So I'm very thankful for that. And yeah, this was the year that they worked very closely to collaborate on this. I know the team was waiting for these standards to come out, and it's exciting that we would be the first district to formally adopt them in Pennsylvania. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, this is a real source of pride, I think, for the district. So again, as we've all said, but thank you to the people, actually in the buildings implementing this. It's really appreciated.
I just wanted to thank the team. They've continued to impress us, and it is exciting to be the first in the state to be, passing the curriculum moving forward. And all your hard work and commitment is really very much appreciated. Other districts are worried about opening in the fall, but at CSU, we put the libraries as a priority. So I want that to be remembered. And Mr. Dukevich, Sean, I find it ironic, you're in your office and you're having troubles today. So we'll figure that out. I think you and, everybody's on the Wi-Fi, I guess.
All right. That brings us to any new business. Is there any new business, committee members? Just shaking heads or, okay. No new business. That brings us to our last round of public comment. Is there any more public comment, Mr. Petiti?
Yes, we have one more public comment from Roberta Winters. In the past, students requested to substitute outside athletic endeavors as a substitute for physical education. This might be the case for ice skating, cycling, fencing, dancing, archery, horseback riding, etc. Will these be put under an umbrella as independent studies under the oversight of a physical education teacher? I would also hope that the goal of health and physical education would not be diminished by students who might engage solely or primarily in team sports without considering the importance of lifetime individual activities that promote health and fitness.
All right.
Thank
you, Dr. Winters. So the curriculum committee continues, despite our hard work, having 2 curriculum committee meetings in June. We still have 2 major items that we haven't been able to get to yet. They are PE for athletes. We did not get to that presentation tonight. And also the fall planning. We had toyed with putting that on this agenda. That is going to now be on the business agenda for next week's business meeting. And so we will just, keep working as hard as we can to get through what we need to do. So thank you again, administrators, for really just going all out to make sure that we're doing what we need to do in terms of the curricular area, as well as all the aspects of the school closure. So, it's just been really impressive to see everybody pulling together. And I think the committee, I hope they share my feelings. We're just really proud of all the work that you've done this year, all of you. So are there any other closing remarks before the business meeting next week from administrators? Anyone? Okay, we will consider the curriculum committee. Oh, Mr. Dukevich?
No, I just wanted to jump in and just say, for anyone watching, our facilities meeting starts at 7:30. So we will have our facilities meeting that starts at 7:30. So I just wanted, it's sometimes hard with this virtual, people expect the next meeting to start right away, but it's scheduled for 7:30 start.
All right. So with
Am I
that,
right? It's done, correct? 7:30, we're starting facilities? Yeah.
yes,
I thought it was
7:30.
6:30, so now I'm excited I have a half-hour break.
Yeah, no, I believe I'm just checking my agenda just
No,
because.
it's 7:30. I checked too. It's
Good.
7:30.
It's unusual that I know we're cutting a couple of things, but we actually are ending a little bit early, so we have a little bit of a moment. So I just want to make sure people who are watching from home, they're not going to see another meeting until the facilities start at 7:30.
Can I ask Ben, since we're not racing to another meeting, I'm not trying to open doors. I just want to understand, because I know there are going to be people, I know there's at least one member of my household who wants to know when we're going to talk about the PE for facilities, what the timing is for us to discuss that. Since I know there are lots.
We need to discuss that. Maybe we'll have a curriculum committee meeting in July. We still have work to do. We'll talk about that, where we're going to catch up with all the work we have to do.
Okay, thanks.
So, all right, so consider with that, the curriculum committee meeting for June is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.